Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're well, thank you for joining me again. A little walkabout. It's a pleasant evening, a little bit chilly, but not been too bad. Hope you all had a good day. Now, I've been watching the news today. I did a video earlier about Jim Davison. I was quite touched to see Jim himself replied in the comments. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about was Keir Starmer. There was two specific areas with Keir Starmer I wanted to cover. And the first one was a question of biology. Yes, biology. The Supreme Court ruling over what is the definition of a female. And you know what the ruling came back as. Well, many people, individuals who consider themselves female, were up in arms about this. They've said many things on social media. They've said all sorts of stuff. They've threatened riots in the streets. They've gone absolutely mad because what they've been allowed to behave as, what they've been allowed to believe, has suddenly been challenged by pretty much the highest court in the land, and they can't accept it. Now, what some people have been doing, and I've seen footage of this online, they've been going and peeing in the streets in protests. You know what a load of bearded up blokes do on a Saturday night when they come out of the pub when they're looking for trouble? Yeah, say no more. Well, you know, I want to clarify my own position on this because I offend people sometimes people close to me actually. Now, I come from a family where I was led to believe, or brought up to understand, that there was only two, a boy and a girl, a man and a woman. And as I've grown up, I do believe that still, and I can't accept any other reality. Although I saw a list the other day where there was something like 21 or 22 different types on it. It's crazy how it's, you know, branched out the way it has, but in my mind there is only two. On the other hand, it's accepted to me, or acceptable to me, that people will feel the way they do about themselves. Okay, you know, this is a conversation that we've been having for years, and you know, if people want to feel like that, if people, you know, feel they are that, then all right, go about your business, go about your lives. But at the end of the day, you can't expect everybody else who feels like I do, for example, to have to change our existence, change the way we do things to fit in with the way you feel. You know, it doesn't work like that. And it's a shame that a court, and probably millions of pounds has had to be spent to get a legal definition on that you can't accept. Well, what's happened, of course, with Keir Starmer, even though for years he's been in support of the rights of these people. I'm being very, very careful with my words for YouTube reasons. You know, he's been a champion of the cause. In the news, he suddenly turned round and said a biological female, adult woman, you know, and gone back on everything he said over all this amount of time. And of course, the words Keir Starmer are trending very heavily right now as a result. The other thing I want to talk about with Keir Starmer is the dreaded Brexit. Now, I will repeat again and again, Brexit. I don't agree with it being a member of the European Union. And I agree and I support the idea of Brexit. Now, more often than not, when you mention the word Brexit in the presence of a lefty, they all lose their shit. They all go completely mad. And they intertwine the political, they intertwine the business, they intertwine the trade, they intertwine the freedom of movement and everything else. You know, for example, I could go and sit in my favourite place, Gran Canaria, for 3 months on my passport, no problem. Whereas before Brexit, I could do it for, what, 6? 6 here, 6 there, something like that. And it's little things like that that might be an inconvenience. But at the end of the day, my problem with the membership of the European Union was the outside interference from people that I never elected. I never had a say on their presence, and therefore a say on what they wanted for us. So to that end, that's why I voted to leave the European Union. And if we ran the referendum again tomorrow, I would want exactly the same thing. Now, when I elect somebody to represent me under the British first past the post system, I expect that person to represent me in that parliament. You know, if you go back as far as the Bill of Rights, the Acts of Union, hell, the English Constitution, it's written there that we have the right, or, you know, we have the obligation to govern ourselves. And of course we can't make all the decisions, all of us, so over the course of time it's understood that we nominate one of our number to represent us and make those decisions for us. That's where our democracy came from, the English Constitution. Something that people forget. I hope people start to learn. Well, back on topic, what Keir Starmer really is doing, he wants to see some kind of reset or a reintegration of our relationship with the European Union. You know, they call him flip-flop Starmer, don't they, on occasion? Well, a few years ago, he was one of those that said it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We vote and then that's it, never to be seen again. Yvette Cooper was another one. Well, they've done everything in their power since to try and undo the result of that referendum. We see it every day. And now Keir Starmer is Prime Minister. He's trying to reset our relationship with the European Union. That's where it comes to defence, things like that. You know, our military is massively understaffed. We don't have anywhere near the numbers we should have for the defence of our nation, and of those we have, I have it from a very reliable source, so only about a quarter of that is deployable. That ain't a good situation to be in if the shit suddenly hit the fan, is it? Well, I sometimes wonder whether those numbers have been run down deliberately. Provocation has been introduced deliberately to make people want to leave. You look at the soldiers that are hanging their rifles up and saying, no, we're not fighting for you, Starmer. So what happens if our land is defenceless? There's another kick in the bollocks for England, by the way, while we're on the subject. We might need a little bit of help. We might need a little bit of integration with our European allies, how they put it. Well, on the 19th of May, there's going to be a meeting of all the great European friends, and they're going to be discussing lots of things. You know, they've been using the supposed conflict in that country with the blue and yellow flag, and you know the one I mean, as a justification to change certain things, you know, what's going on. And one of those is our supposed collective defence. And they talk about military cooperation. Our army, our navy, our air force, our intelligence assets, other weapons, all controlled elsewhere by Brussels. It's a frightening prospect, suddenly waking up one day and realising that we are not in full control of our own military. Now, surely to hand that over to a foreign entity, there's got to be a big problem with that somewhere, the legal side of things, wouldn't you think? I certainly would. 19th of May, remember it. Well, that's on the agenda, amongst other things. Now, if you do your own research, there's a 60-page PDF file that I came across which details everything they're going to talk about, and it is the ultimate in Brexit betrayal. It really is, really is. And I think they're going to chuck us straight under the bus, the apple cart, or whatever else you want to call it. So those are the two things I wanted to point out about Starmer. And you have all this distraction with his little so-called video, which turned out to be fake, doing the rounds, the arguments about trivial things, and then stuff that's vitally important for this country gets pushed through and nobody knows. Now, I'm walking down a street in England, and England happens to be pretty much the largest geographical area in this whole affair, and we have no independence, no autonomy, no say, and no jurisdiction over all of this whatsoever. It's almost as if we're a captured state and we have to sit back and watch what they're doing to us. It's an awful thing to behold, and I hope at some point in time things start to happen. I'm nearly 50 years old, and I'm old enough to remember the way things used to be, or at least in part. And it's really horrible the way things are going. I've got two kids, 11, 21, with their whole lives ahead of them. And what's going to happen in their country when I'm too goddamn old to do anything about it? What about you and your kids? Grandkids even. You know, one of the wonderful things on YouTube, I get a little demographic chart, tells me how old you all are. It's quite good. And then I get an idea of who watches. It's quite a cool thing. Lots to think about. And it goes to an earlier video I did about everything's not as it seems. You know, you're told things in the mainstream media, and then when you do a little bit of digging, when you go looking for answers, you get a little bit shocked about what you find out there, out yonder way. Well, anyway, that's enough of my stuff. Two things about Starmer. Certainly worth thinking about, certainly worth keeping an eye on, especially if you're a supporter. Oh, one thing, funny story I'll end with. My letterbox the other day went ka-ching. What the bloody hell's that? It's too early for the postman. So I went, and there was a Labour Party pamphlet on my doormat. I already had the Reform one through. I'm waiting for the Tory one. So I thought, what a bloody cheek. So I went outside, and the poor lefty leaflet deliverer was at my next door neighbour. So I ripped this thing in half with the most audible tear I could muster. And the poor bloke turned around and looked at me. I just smiled at him and put it in the bin. Walked in my house and shut the door. That's only the second Labour person that's appeared at my house, I think, the last 10 years. Oh dear, oh dear. I haven't actually spoken to anybody this time round, and I know some of you haven't either. So there you go. Anyway, I'm off. Enough waffling. I've got to go and have some tea. Thanks as always for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. Have a look at these videos. I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.